every choice I make in this moment could change the whole future.
Definitely. I mean, that's what happened to Pete.
I'm being serious.
Yeah, so is Pete.
Pete.
Your friend, Pete. He's standing there a moment ago, but he stepped up.
Pull to open.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do?
It's just time travel.
You know what I mean?
The only thing to do is to stop worrying about it.
If you say so.
Pete, stop worrying.
Is that what you said to Pete?
Who's Pete?
Mr. Tater!
Oh, and that's a coincidence.
Here come the drums!
Lights in the ice, 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 lights in the ice.
Hello, and welcome to a very frosty edition of Pull to Open, the only ongoing quest in the podcast world to watch all of Doctor Who, every single episode, in entirely random order. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal, and my, it's cold in here. It's freezing. We're a couple of chilly journalists, couple of chilly Doctor Who fans.
We
and
like to keep
Chris
it
and
cool.
I, we do keep it cool as we bounce all around the Doctor Who canon in this random journey that we call Pull to Open.
That's
and
right.
Boy, have we been bouncing lately.
We've been bouncing around in the snow is what we've been doing, because 3 stories ago, if you remember, it took us to the North Pole for last Christmas, and everything was snowy. And then it took us to Flux. Not a lot of snow in Flux, but Flux did kind of leave us cold.
Oh, I knew you were going there.
Hey, and then last time it took us back to the snow, and you may notice that the snow falling on the Doctor there in the church on Ruby Road, the most recent Christmas special and the most recent episode of Doctor Who. Notice the snow falling. So here's the thing. I just want to pause and acknowledge this, because we've, by now, you Pull to Open listener will have listened to our hot takes on the first 2 episodes of the new season.
Right.
You may also have listened to our to Pete interviewing me, because I have the screeners for those first 2 episodes. So, but here we are. When this is broadcasting, we're in the very strange situation where you, dear listener, and I have watched these episodes, and you, dear listener, includes Future Pete. Future Pete, say hi to Future Pete.
Hi, Future Pete. I'm a little jealous of you with all that knowledge of the first 2 episodes of the new season, because you've seen them and I have not.
Yes.
This is very strange. This is kind of like the timey-wimey equivalent of when it's kind of super cold in the shade outside, but super warm in the sun.
Yes.
You know, like that's kind of the time of year we're at right now. And it's just, it screws with the mind a little bit.
So there are some points, and this is the first one, where I'd like to just do a bit of this podcast with Future Pete. So Pete, if you just want to mute your mic, Future Pete, come in, and we can talk about the importance of the snow, right? Like the randomizer showing us like the bits of snow, the snow falling. Like, how about that, huh?
Totally.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
With all the crystal references and all the stuff about Celsius and Fahrenheit.
So much snow following the Doctor. Yes, anyway, so we went from the church on Ruby Road with its frosty Christmassy theme, and the randomizer said, no, I'm not done. I'm not done with that sort of lovely, wintry, snowy feel. And it took us back to season 10 of the new show. One of its favorites, perhaps its favorite. I think we've now done 5 stories in this season. Season 10, episode 3, Thin Ice. Back to Capaldi. Back
Boom.
to the randomizer's favorite Doctor.
Yeah, apparently this is comfort food for the randomizer.
It really is. It
Going back to
loves
the
Bill.
Mhm.
It loves it's. We've done both episodes on either sides of this. We've done Smile.
Right.
We've done Oxygen.
Did Knock Knock.
We've done Knock Knock. We have not yet done the pilot, and we've not yet done, of course, the double header at the end, which is now, reputedly, according to Doctor Who Magazine poll, one of the best of all time. Looking forward to that. But it also has not taken us to Extremis. Did take us to Pyramid at the End of the World, Lie of the Land.
That was early on.
very
we've
early on.
had a good chunk of Bill's journey.
Yeah.
And this is I would say a key one, not as memorable as maybe some of the other ones, but having revisited it, I'm glad to sort of get them out of order, because you definitely get different ingredients of
it's nice, isn't it?
where she's at.
I think we can say without fear of spoiler, certainly my experience of this was I liked it much better the second time around. It's so nice to go back to that feeling after Flux, where I did not like it better the second time around. So yeah, thank you, Randomizer, for that particular palate cleanser.
Well, I'm glad you're very comfortable in liking something. Let's get some discomfort injected into this podcast, and maybe we can focus it on you in the Whomoji challenge.
Oh boy. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
This is why I don't feel bad torturing you with discussions with Future Pete.
Yeah, this is the point in the podcast where we bind Chris with chains under the Thames and prod him every now and then to digest some emojis.
I've got to say, Pete, if I don't do well at this, my anger shall flow through all time and space, and Pete shall be erased from thin ice.
Oh wow!
We won't even get to discuss the companion Pete that joins in this episode. But
that fury that's coming out the other end of you after this will know no bounds, certainly.
Yeah.
All right. This, of course, is the time in the podcast where I get to torture Chris by describing emojis to him, and those emojis correspond to a Doctor Who title from the television program. And we've got a good number of them in recently from reviews, and thank you very much, folks, for reviewing the podcast. That's a great way, of course, to interact with the show, and obviously the best way to submit a Whomoji. And this comes from a review from Caroline. The actual handle is Caroline M01, and it's 4 emojis. Are you ready, sir?
Oh boy, as I'll ever be. I did take a quick gander at the codex just earlier, just to confirm that this was the Randomizer's favorite season. So I don't know if that puts me in a better position, because if I absorbed any Doctor Who titles, it was just incidentally to looking at the season number. So,
okay.
Let's see.
So you're coming in reasonably clean slated here.
Yes.
Good. All right, here we go. First emoji. It's the family emoji, but it's the mother-daughter.
Okay.
Second emoji. Jellyfish.
Okay.
Third emoji. The ogre. Sort of horned, red, mean guy.
Okay.
Fourth emoji. The crayon. I'm going to drop that in the chat. I'm going to drop this in the chat. There you go. Do something with that.
Okay. Wait, what was the first one again?
It's mother-daughter.
Mother-daughter. Oh, yeah, mother-daughter. That's a very weird symbol that I haven't seen before. These are...
Mother-daughter? Why is that weird?
Well, no, just in the form of, like, it's got that blue box around it.
Oh, well, I guess it's so tiny in the chat, you're probably just focusing on the colors. But yeah, the family emoji has so many variations. That was sort of one of the issues with, like, the Unicode. Anyway, having been a tech editor, there was a lot of reporting on the various emoji expansions, but there was a lot of different variations on the family. And
remind me
mother-daughter.
What that second one is?
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish.
Not an octopus. Not an octopus. Very important.
It's a blue jellyfish. Okay, so not an octopus means it's not a Dalek episode, so I shouldn't go there. But my God, this is giving me those bad dreams when you've not studied for a test and it turns out to be in Chinese vibes. The crayon?
Crayon. Very important.
Is it Fear Her?
It's Fear Her!
Oh, goodness.
Nice.
Oh,
yeah, of course, because mother-daughter, and it was the creature that was kind of like this jellyfish collective thing, was trying to rejoin its people.
I didn't remember
the ogre was the sort of thing that was getting conjured, the abusive father, and then the crayon, of course, she was capturing people by drawing them.
Of course, yes. I mean, I really watch Fear Her all the time. I can't wait for us to get to Fear Her. It's sure to be a Viscount banger when we get there.
Absolutely. A Viscount banger of emojis. Thank you very much, Caroline. That was amazing for you to submit. Feel free to submit some more.
God,
Keep reviewing the show with different accounts.
The randomizer is going to be listening to this, isn't it? That would be so randomizer of it to take us to fear her now. Oh, you watch it all the time? Let's go there. Oh, okay. Not looking forward to that. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everyone who writes in. I do love to be tortured, so please keep them coming. And if you're on Spotify, you can do something interactive as well. Not just torture me with the review. You can poll to open. That's right, pull from the bottom of the screen. There is a poll. And what you can do right now is rate Thin Ice before you've even heard us talk about it. Because, this is not the 19th century. This is the age where we have opinions and those opinions are correct. And it's much more like the giggle. I'm just throwing in the name of other episode titles the randomizer could take us to. Sorry. But we have some results now. We have some results from the poll that we did on Flux.
We do indeed. Got some Flux results.
And just to be clear,
notes file.
actually, before we get into this, I just want to pause and take a moment and ask you, Pete. Let us remind ourselves. You did not like the Church on Ruby Road for a number of reasons.
That's right.
And you rated it what now?
The Church on Ruby Road. I rated that a Professor Hater.
Okay, so I just want to be clear that you're according to your ratings, you liked Flux better than the Church on Ruby Road.
Well, I mean, is a Cassandra better than a Hater?
Well, you've got that Dalek eye stalk. That's the thing. You have a Cassandra Dalek hybrid. So
the Flux has some highs. Like I said, the Once Upon a Time improved drastically on second watch, and Village of the Angels is a banger in my view. So.
Okay,
probably overall it is better than the Church of Ruby Road. Yeah.
Whoa! That's a hot take. You heard it here first, folks. Pete, thanks. Go back and listen to our episodes on both. Go back and rewatch Flux if you can.
It's hard, they're very different. It's kind of like, and then it's almost apples oranges, and we do these ratings, but it's tough. Is the Dalek invasion of Earth better than Church on Ruby Road? I mean, they're very, very different episodes trying to do very different things.
It is tough, but these are the decisions we have to make as time travelers.
Then if you are forcing that upon the interpretation of those ratings, then I guess I have to go with it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Just wanted you to be on record there. Okay. So my rating was a Cassandra Hater hybrid. Your rating was a Cassandra Dalek hybrid.
That's correct.
And what are the results?
The results are Professor Hater wins the day but it's a first past the post. So let me go over these in detail. Let me be so number one, absolutely nobody rated it a banger. Also, nobody rated it a fixed point in time, which surprises me. I would think that to some extent it's a little bit hard to judge.
Yeah.
Because it was made during COVID, it had all this epic ambition. It had interesting stuff that sort of took ideas and did things with them and didn't do other things with, you know what I mean? Like there's so much, it's a jumble of so many things made under impossible circumstances that I can see a lot of people just abstaining on Flux. But nobody did.
They didn't.
Everybody was eager to judge.
Those who abstained just didn't vote.
So as I said, Professor Hater wins the day with about 31% of the vote, but both the Dalek and the Ogron had strong showings.
Interesting.
At about 20, around 25% each.
Okay.
Now, our rating that we both favored, the Lady Cassandra, did decently, but was the fourth place. It's only at 19%.
I'm surprised because, as I said in the podcast, like I've never seen a clearer cut case of Lady Cassandra. Flux looks amazing. The plot is paper thin. No reasoning for that, but yeah, surprising.
So on the whole, if you consider the Cassandra Dalek being more on the favorable side, they are definitely trailing the Hater Ogron crowd. So on the whole, I think we can sort of say Doctor Who fandom, at least the ones that listen to this podcast, gave it a bit of a thumbs down.
Yeah, but a bit, only a bit of a thumbs down. Yeah, interesting. Well, thank you so much for voting.
Yeah.
You can still go to the Flux episode, vote on that poll. Remember to vote on Thin Ice at some point. I mean, hey, you might want to be kind of completely anachronistic about this and wait till you listen to us talk about it before making your decision. You might also want to wait until you might be thinking of yourself, now what exactly happened in Thin Ice? It's been a while since I saw it, or maybe I never saw it. I just wish these guys would just cut to the chase and summarize it in a very short space of time. Well, you, dear listener, are in luck because we have an
Theoretical
expert.
listener. Hypothetical listener.
Yes, you, future Pete, are in luck.
Mm. There you go.
Because past Pete is now going to perform for your pleasure, for your listening pleasure, the amazing trick, ladies and gentlemen, in this tent on the ice. If you pay 6 pence at the door, you can come in, see the amazing Pete, Doctor Who companion and summarizer of Thin Ice.
Well, let me just get my sword that I can swallow while I do it. That'll really impress the listeners.
Yes.
If you're listening and not watching on YouTube, that's what I'm doing. I'm also swallowing a sword.
You
at the
know,
same time.
you know what? It's not really a TLDW unless you see it in 0G with tentacles and magic spells. So if you could add those, that'd be great. No, we do this thing every week for new Who episodes, as this is. We allot 1 minute, a whole minute to talk about
Right.
Thin Ice. You should be on the thickest of ice here, sir.
Sure.
Are you ready to skate out? I mean, you're a Canadian. You know what ice is about.
Yeah, that's true.
What ice is a boot? I'm sorry.
I got that.
I'm so sorry.
I'm going to strap on my skates. I'm going to twirl around and then fire the puck at this TLDW and score. I know it.
I have total faith in you. You are the Wayne Gretzky of TLDW. This is totally going to happen in 1 minute. So here we go with the official pull to open summary of Thin Ice in 1 minute, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
The Doctor and Bill are back in London in the past, and it's cold, and it's the River Thames is frozen, and they're surprised by an elephant. And they realize they're at a frost fair, and there's tons of people all over the ice with tents and enjoying themselves. But what they realize very quickly is something bad is happening. Basically, people are being lured onto thin ice by these lights under the ice, which basically get them to drag them underneath, and something terrible happens to them. So they befriend some street urchins who this has happened to. Bill and the Doctor sort of have words because she doesn't really like his cold approach to things, but he justifies himself in interesting ways. But then they realize that there's this guy, Sutcliffe, who is this evil, racist dude who's basically been keeping a creature under the Thames prisoner to create fuel and feeding him people. So they do their best to thwart him by essentially turning the tables on him, freeing the creature with the explosives he was going to use to kill everyone to feed the creature. And then Sutcliffe dies, and Bill and the Doctor give
time
estate to the urchins.
I'd say that's a Wayne Gretzky goal right there. Good job, sir. You
had to bat it off the crossbar, but yes,
I could see you skating past some holes that rabbits had created in the ice.
That's true.
There were many to get sucked into. Well done for not getting sucked into.
A little bit of lip service to the Bill Doctor relationship, which we were going to talk about a lot. But I mean, I felt like that was such a key component. I didn't want to leave it out totally from the plot summary, but that was definitely like a bit of a digression.
You almost got sucked into the episode's most satisfying moment, which is the Doctor punching Sutcliffe, the racist, for being racist. After, and that is so wonderfully set up. And if you remember one thing from Thin Ice, it may be that moment, because the Doctor's like lecturing Bill on, like, we've got diplomacy, we've got to be nice and calm, we've got to be, and then the first thing he does when Sutcliffe leaves the room and barks at Bill for like not standing up in the presence of her betters, he just gives him one of the most satisfying, look, thumbs down on the Apple camera. Yes, that's what I say about...
The Doctor gave him a thumbs down. That's
what I say to you, Sutcliffe, sir, for your racism. Yes, and just one of the most satisfying punches that you may have ever seen. And this story was right around the time when, after Trump's inauguration, punching Nazis kind of became a thing. And I remember thinking
but
that
I
at
mean,
the time.
like, yes, but I mean, here's the thing. What I like about that scene is that it is layered in that you understand his fury, you understand uh, why he's doing it, and you're even sort of in a position to cheer him. But he's also, it's kind of a dumb move, because suddenly, like, oh, now they're captured, and because he didn't take that diplomatic side, that the tables have sort of turned on what they're doing, right? So while it's a passionate move, it's not the smartest move.
Yes.
And I don't think it's saying like don't do it, obviously, but it is also like showing like that there is a cost to following your passions in such an unbridled kind of way, right?
Well,
So this is
there
kind of
is.
like the whole theme of the episode, I feel like, because
Yes.
it's all about the Doctor and Bill's relationship and them sort of teaching each other um their why they approach things in their own way,
Yes.
and they're neither one is wrong,
Yeah.
even though Bill, like, I think they boldly still show that she has a lot to learn
Mm,
and does need to sort of check herself,
a little
but the
bit.
Doctor needs that passion. He also, and
Does.
that's why he travels with companions, and he needs to have them sometimes sort of help point the way and
So
right himself in terms of his own morality, and that's definitely what I've sort of read into that moment.
So I went to another New Who episode that we're going to discuss again in various contexts in this episode. We've been there, The Beast Below, and we'll just, this is like literally a beast below the ice, right? Kind of the same situation. We'll get there, but it's also, I think, the same situation in the sense that, we remember from The Beast Below, the Doctor saying to Amy Pond, don't interfere, then runs off after a
Yeah.
crying child, and Amy Pond's like, oh, don't interfere unless there's a crying child. Yes, and that's the Doctor. That's the Doctor in a nutshell, right? That defines him. This also defines him like in a very similar way. It's like, be diplomatic, you gotta, I've done this for 2,000 years. Like, you gotta really be kind of, good in the situation, and violence isn't going to solve anything here. And it's like, so, don't interfere, be diplomatic, be kind, unless a guy is being just like, prejudicial to your face and treating someone as unimportant right to your face, then punch him. Right. That feels like a very sort of another real world example of don't interfere unless there's a crying child. Very, very similar vibes. Doesn't benefit the Doctor, but it goes to the soul of the Doctor.
Yeah.
And who the Doctor is. And speaking of going to the soul of the Doctor, it is, I mean, this is low-key an investigation of his soul, right? Almost season 8 level. Almost am I a good man level.
Absolutely. Well, this is honestly, and I think it almost, I wouldn't even say it almost, it really kind of gives you that view of why the 12th Doctor is the way he is. Kind of 2 seasons, not too late. I wouldn't say it's too late, but I do think this episode, more than any other, gives the layers to his approach to things and why he is the way he is much better than anything that happened before. I feel like with Clara, too often that scene that early on where he's talking to Bill about he doesn't have time for the luxury of outrage, which is a great line.
Yes.
And it's so smart, like a 2,000-year-old being who's seen it all. Like, this is how Capaldi played it, and it was perfect. It makes total sense.
And it's mirrored wonderfully towards the end of the episode after they're captured. And Bill has a good comeback on that. Like, you got nothing but time, bud. You're basically, you get captured all the time. Yes, you have plenty of time for outrage, don't you? So it's nice that's a callback and that's dealt with. But my goodness, I mean, this episode overall is both funnier and darker than I remembered. And I can't remember the Doctor ever being confronted, as Bill confronts him, with this question of how many people have you killed?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe Day of the Doctor a little bit, but not quite the same way.
Yes. That was more how many children were in Gallifrey, right? But definitely.
But what I was going to sort of say about the Clara thing, like, I felt with Clara that sort of exchange would more often be handled with banter.
Yes.
And you wouldn't really get much depth with it. Whereas here, the Moffat just sort of goes, no, let's really peel that back.
Yes.
and how he sort of sees himself and why he seems indifferent, at least. But he's
Yes.
more he's more like he's so experienced, he's fast forward to the end, like whatever, 6 or 12 or whatever step process that someone would normally need to process grief and anger and all of it. He just cuts right to the end. And so I think he's reasonably patient with Bill in that she obviously needs that time to process what's happened, particularly to the child, and goes with it. But ultimately, like, I think she comes around to his view and realizes that we had a fight. But now I sort of can appreciate where he's coming from more.
Right.
And
It's a nice contrast. It's a show don't tell. Like,
Yeah.
Bill realizes that the Doctor is a killer because he is. And there's no way around that. Like, we've seen the Doctor kill multiple times.
Sure.
Classic show, new show, happens all the time. Maybe not until Capaldi that we really, really felt it, especially after the killing of the Clockwork Man in Deep Breath, and that look that Capaldi has after that, but it show don't tell, because it immediately contrasts it with the Doctor looks after the children. The Doctor is reading to the children. The Doctor is feeding the children because he's stolen a bunch of pork pies and put them in that great top hat of his. And
he's very
that's
sweet right from the get-go with them. I liked it. Where it's like the first little urchin that comes up to him, he gives her his hat.
Yes.
And that's really good. I mean, you get these layers, these dimensions to the Doctor, and I think you didn't quite get as many of those before, like in Series 8, right? Like they didn't balance it out.
There is an
quite
arc.
so well.
There is an arc to Capaldi, and you could argue that arc is him learning how to hug and learning about children, or relearning about children. Because remember, when he regenerates, he has that wonderful line after the silly line about don't eat pears. He's like, never tell your name to anyone because they won't understand, except children. Children can hear your name sometimes. And that's just, shivers. Such a beautiful moment, and really, really explored here. And I don't want to go too far without acknowledging Sarah Dollard, who is the writer of Thin Ice. She was also the writer of Face the Raven, which we've done. Yes. I'm starting to forget how many stories we've done. So we've now got a Sarah Dollard bingo, which is fabulous, because I think this is the only other one.
It's funny. It's like this podcast is 2,000 years old. We're forgetting
it really
what we've
is.
Done.
Exactly. I'm starting to understand why the Doctor forgets things.
Yeah, she did a great job here. I think there's a lot to praise. There's really good balance in the writing, again, showing the sweetness and the coldness, and really unpacking that coldness. I think there's something a little off with the pacing.
Yeah.
In that sometimes there's, where they should be in peril and there should be some more adrenaline going. You don't really get it. And sort of things sort of kind of random. I mean, it's not bad. It's just it's strange that we didn't remember it so much, right? Because there is, like, once you really look at it, like, oh, there's really like some gold here to be mined out of this episode. But there's this stuff with the creature, and particularly when they're first investigating it and they're in the wetsuits, which they never really explain how they even got them. Just the next scene they're in wetsuits. It's like, okay. I guess they're just lying around London.
19th century diving suits. Yeah,
but then they get pulled under the water, right? Because Bill gets pulled under, the Doctor dives after her, and then they see the creature, and it's all effects, and the effects aren't bad, and they kind of can get away with stuff because it's underwater, but there's no danger really felt there, where they feel like there should have been. There should have been more of a sort of appreciation for I don't know. It should have just been better paced, I felt like, because then suddenly they were back up, and they slowly but surely put pieces together, but you don't really get too invested in the actual puzzle.
That's true. Yeah, you're not really invested in that beast, and I can see what they're going for in that they're not actually scared thing, which is it's the beast below reveal, right? The beast is nice, or the beast deserves to live. And the only way this is not a beast below retread is that we learn this in the middle rather than at the end. So I can see what they're going for there. It's interesting because I doing pull to open for so long, I feel like I'm starting to learn your preferences, right? And think about what your preferences might be when I'm watching the show. So I saw this and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if Pete's going to like this because like it doesn't really it gives the monster short shrift, and especially after our Church on Ruby Road discussion where you were very anti-goblin. By the way, I can see why you were anti-goblin, because it's the goblins that came along and took Pete out of this episode. So it kind of makes sense.
Well, it's a
surfing the waves of time.
There's a couple of great episodes to compare this one to, or not great episodes, but similar episodes. So one is The Beast Below and the other's Kill the Moon.
Yeah.
And for The Beast Below, I think the beast stuff works because they gave it more of a backstory, and the beast simply had more agency, right? Like it came to save the children, heard the children's cries, and there was a little more. There was a little more there. Whereas here, it's just kind of a mystery. You don't really know if it's bad or good, and she kind of presumes it is, or at the very least feels that freeing the beast at the end. I'm talking about Bill here.
Yeah.
Is simply the right thing to do, regardless of what destruction it may or may not wring. What's the right present tense verb of wrought?
May not have wrought.
May not have wrought.
Yes.
Got it. I took English once, but
I guess what hath God wrought?
Perhaps like in a different century, but. So in other words, like the sort of plot here just isn't as fleshed out. And again, I say this all. You're actually very good at figuring out my preferences, which is to say, the plot, in my view, is how you earn those beats, right? So again, I don't say it's super weak. It could have been stronger here, with a little more to that. That said, you don't want to completely repeat The Beast Below. So if the call was, well, let's give the beast more stuff and do a retread of The Beast Below even more, or give more depth to, say, Sutcliffe, the street urchins, and have more scenes there, I think they ultimately made the right call.
I agree, because yes, I'm glad to hear you say that, because it's weak on the monster side of things, but my goodness, is it strong and underrated, you might say, on many other points. And we shouldn't go too far without mentioning that this is really the first exploration of race that Doctor Who has done. Bill pointing to herself and saying melanin, slavery is still totally a thing. And yes, it is. We will get into the history corner. And I'm going to, we're not going to pace this like a bad Doctor Who episode. Pete, I want to tell you when you're ready for the history corner, because we're going to talk about race in Regency London.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the whitewashing of history, which the Doctor mentions.
I'm here for it.
No, we don't have to get there yet, and we're going to talk about the Frost Fair. So there's a lot in the history corner. I don't want to derail things yet.
Why would you think the history corner is a derailment? It's like maybe it's the star attraction of our podcast.
Yeah, roll up, and see the history corner its natural habitat. Yeah, I mean, we can go there. Do you want to go there now? Should we do it? Okay. Okay, good. Because let's talk about Pete. Yes, I was going to say let's talk about the humor in this episode, and let's start with Pete, because I have some things to say to future Pete. But go ahead, present Pete.
I was in Doctor Who, guys, and no one remembers. Okay? Bill stepped on a butterfly in Regency London. Yes, it was good times. I love the joke about Pete. Again, I think it's just it's a funny joke, number one. It's really good humor. But I think it's also like, it does in a subtle way underscore the Doctor's, not quite his coldness, but his like getting past things. Because this actually happened to him, like if you think about the cracks in time and people disappearing, like he's very familiar that this is an actual thing. You can rewrite time and lose people.
Yes.
And here he is just casually making a joke about it, which is, I think,
in the Time War, doesn't in Big Finish, doesn't it have to an actual companion? I remember a Time War episode where the companion that Paul McGann's Doctor was with kept changing.
Oh, yeah, I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
There was, I'm sure they've done stuff. I haven't gotten that far in Big Finish yet, but it's just, really emphasizes like, I've seen it all type attitude he has here, and he has seen it all. Like he says, 2,000 years. Although I think a good chunk of that was on like Trenzalore.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we're definitely relying on the doctor to say how old he is here. But yes, I do want to say, before we go too far away from that butterfly moment, they're stepping on the butterfly moment. Wow, future Pete. I mean, what did you think about the comparing that to Space Babies, right? To the butterfly thing at the start of Space Babies? Wild, right? Yeah.
Pretty wild. I'm so glad it's in the trailer.
Sorry, future Pete made a great joke. But you wouldn't understand it yet. Anyway, how does it feel to be in the Truman Show?
Am I supposed to splice something into these places? I'm not keeping up with the thing.
Yeah. We'll fix it in post. So future you can come back there. We'll just leave a gap, and future you can come in and add a comment, like perhaps in like a ghostly voice. And also, you probably noticed that, like, the thing about the crown in the Devil's Cord kind of jives with the Doctor, like feeling like he's being with the money on the ice, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. This guy knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, okay, that's all the future Pete conversation we're going to have. I will
step
say
on this podcast for a second, so
I will just go back to my main point here and say that Thin Ice is way funnier than I remembered. Like where I laughed when he introduces himself to Sutcliffe, or he's being introduced to Sutcliffe as, how does he pronounce it? Dr. Disco, like the Disco, says the butler. It's so perfect. That just made me laugh despite myself. It's not wrestling unless it's in 0G with tentacles. Like that's
magic
so
spells.
That's so Doctor. Like he's a hipster of time and space. It's like, oh yeah, this is wrestling, but you haven't really seen wrestling. Like that's very, very Doctor.
No one does the understated quips like Capaldi so much. You know what I mean? Like they kind of almost whiz by you too fast, but he's really funny. And all the stuff with, like, just at the Frost Fair early on with the con jokes, and then he's playing with the con man, and I can steal something in your store, and then he's like tossed out, and then he did steal something.
He did.
He got the pies and stuff.
And we just see one pie, and then we realize that he's stolen a whole hat full of pies later on, which is just a perfect reveal. I really love that. And it's all something else that's very Doctorish is the throwing in of a historical character that presumably the Doctor has seen or met. And often it's like, Sir Isaac Newton, blah, 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 Houdini, blah, 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 as it was in the Church on Ruby Road. This time, it is a Mr. Jesus that is mentioned. And this is the only mention of Jesus, if you don't count oh my goodness, in
Christmas?
No, in the next Doctor, specifically the word Jesus.
Right, and they say Lord a lot, our
probably.
Lord, etc.
Yes,
right.
But
the word Jesus
Christ is mentioned in the next Doctor. By the way, you two can do this if you go to chakoteo.net, the transcript site, and you just search for individual words. You'll find out how often words have been mentioned.
Reveal our secrets now.
Oh, sorry.
God, I got to edit that out now.
Yeah, edit that bit out, future Pete. Thanks.
Not quite so far in the future, Pete.
Sorry, future Pete just made another very funny joke about butterflies.
Triplication here.
That's right. It's by generation of Pete. That's what actually happened to him when Bill stepped on the butterfly. Anyway, there's only one expletive Jesus in all of Doctor Who. We've been there. It was in the War Games.
Oh, what was that? One of the humans, I assume.
I think it was.
I don't remember.
Smythe, as I recall.
Oh, okay.
But
interesting.
Yeah, right.
I don't remember that, but that's. I'll have to go look that up. Okay. So basically, they've brought up Jesus. They've said the name Jesus 3 times in the War Games.
Yes,
in the next Doctor, and now here in Thin Ice.
And this is the first mention ever of the Doctor saying that he's seen Jesus, and that Jesus is black, or a bit more black than they show in the movies.
Oh, color.
To be clear.
I mean, colored, yes. I shouldn't say color, but you know what I mean. I mean, they're a person of color, rather.
A person of color. Yes. The line is, Bill looks around her. She sees a lot of non-white characters. She says, "Interesting." He says, "What is?" Bill says, "Regency London, bit more black than they show in the movies." And the doctor says, yeah, so was Jesus. History is a whitewash, which is interesting. And we'll get to that in the history corner. But it's interesting to contrast that with the Shakespeare Code, right? Where he takes Martha to Shakespearean London. And again, Martha notices, hey, this is a bit more black than I was expecting.
Right.
And in that case, the doctor's like, oh, yeah, it just, yeah, of course. Like, the doctor takes it in his stride, and he's boosting British history, basically, by saying, oh, yeah, very, very diverse culture, port city, a lot of people came here. Whereas this doctor is a bit less sort of rah-rah than Tennant was.
Well, the script is. And I think it's good at showing both sides of it, right? Because obviously it's like, it's more... There's more people of color here. This seems to be the exact kind of thing you would find them, right? This kind of like street fair where there is a lot of fun to be had and a lot of opportunity as well. So
is that the sign? Is that the cue for the history?
It could be the cue to get us going into the pull to open history corner.
All right. Settle down, children. Here we are. Let's talk. We're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about frost fairs, and specifically the 1814 frost fair, which the Doctor has visited twice in the show. We'll get to the time that he brought Stevie Wonder there to impress River.
Well, you mean he just talked about it, though?
River talked about it. So I think we can trust it a little bit more than if the Doctor said it. So we'll get
this same frost fair?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
And in Sarah Dollard's original script, which you can download, which is online, there is a deleted line about the Doctor saying, I had Stevie Wonder there over that bridge over there. So he's specifically referencing it. So anyway,
so tell us about frost fairs, Chris.
Frost fairs. Okay, you want to go there first?
Well, why not? Because it's the whole setting, and it seems like if there's anything that Doctor Who has done in our recent adventures, including actually Last Christmas as well, but the Church on Ruby Road, and especially this one, that has been so crazy unbelievable. It's that it snows a lot in London, and that like things freeze. I don't live in London. I have only visited once, but I mean, my understanding is that doesn't really happen all that much these days.
It doesn't happen now for a number of interesting reasons. Okay, so we'll save the discussion of race in Regency London, because I've got some things to say about that. But let's start with the frost fairs. Yeah. Okay. So. Climate change. The climate has already been changing. We had a little ice age that sort of started to peter out in the 18th century, where the world was just colder. And there were the Thames did freeze a lot more, specifically between about the 16th and the early 19th century. This was the last great one. Now, two reasons why it doesn't happen anymore. First, the climate is warmer, but also the Thames, the shape of the Thames was changed. It was made lower and faster. And
just as snaky.
But just as snaky, they took out London Bridge, which had all its piers on it, which was slowing the flow down a lot. In 1831, they demolished the old London Bridge that had houses on it. The frost fairs were a thing for a while, but they hadn't been there for like half a century at this point in 1814. It was the 1st to the 5th of February was the frost fair, and it really, I mean, there's no police force in 1814. This is a really rambunctious affair. There's no health and safety. People did actually drown when the ice cracked, and there was a printing machine that floated away because they would drag out printing machines onto the ice. Like that was one of the main draws.
The other things they didn't have was really good weather forecasting. Yes, right. Like who knew if it was going to be like a 30-degree difference the next day? Like you're going to set up stuff and on the ice, and it could be it seems like it was a bit risky. And I gotta wonder, like the thought process there, if there was any. of like, okay, it's been cold enough for so many days.
Yeah.
Remember those things we did 50 years ago? Frost bears? Like, let's go for it.
Well, here's the thing. Necessity is the mother of invention, and the river was a way of life for a lot of people. So if the river closes down, that's a loss of salary. Like, you don't have protected salaries.
Right, sure.
So all the watermen, they've got to find some way of making a living. And one way of the living was to charge you a penny. By the way, it's sixpence in the script. It was just a penny to go out onto the ice over this plank. And one of the first things they set up was casinos, and they talked about people losing their money because there were also tents with a lot of booze in them. So you have booze. It was basically Vegas out there on the ice, and you'd lose all your money at the casino, and then you wouldn't have a penny to get back. You'd be stuck on the ice. But let's talk about the stuff that they sold. And I want you to imagine that you're there. I want you to imagine that the Doctor has taken you there in your TARDIS, in his TARDIS, and you're there. And you are seeing, let's first of all talk about the food. The food and
Pork
drink.
pies. Good.
Pork pies. Well, no, they weren't actually pork. It was most likely to be mutton.
Okay.
It took over 24 hours to roast the mutton in front of the fire. But it could feed 800 people.
Oh, wow.
A single mutton.
It's more than I would think a pig roast or something like that. That's a lot. Yeah.
Yes. So you're walking among these tents. These tents are just so basic. They're made out of sails from ships and propped up with oars. They're called fuddling tents because of all the strong liquor you drink in them. And let's talk about what you would be fuddled on. Let me just see if I can find it here. Okay, so Pete,
Fuddled
you're there,
on?
fuddled. Yeah, so you're on the ice. Someone hands you a glass of Brunswick Mum,
Okay.
and they say, "Have some Mum."
And I'd be like,
What do you-
I've got my own mum. Appreciate it.
But would you drink it?
I mean, in the spirit of of being there, sure. Why wouldn't I?
Great. Okay, so you've just drunk a beer from Germany,
Right.
which ranges from weak to strong depending on the brewing method. One of the first black beers recorded in history.
Okay.
History's a
So it
white beer
predates
wash. So there's that. Okay, good. You've had the not too strong Brunswick Mum.
Yes.
Next, someone hands you a glass of Old Tom.
Okay.
You want to drink it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the mum was a good experience, so Old Tom, how bad can this be?
Old Tom is gin. A sweet gin recipe thought of as one of the first cocktails. Gin was way strong. So you might get a bit wasted. You might get a bit fuddled on that.
That's when the street urchins come out and grab my stuff.
They
And I'm
do.
like, damn it, I see what you were doing there.
The street urchins did pick pockets. And the final glass that I'm going to hand you is just called Pearl. That's
Pearl?
spelled P-U-R-L.
Well, it's not Pearl Mackie, so
No.
it's okay to drink. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, Pearl is wormwood ale.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, with bitter herbs often used in it.
I assume wormwood is a name of someone and not an actual some way worms and wood would be combined to get in the ale.
Well, wormwood is the thing in absinthe.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And but yeah, Pearl was sold by Pearl men from Pearl boats on the Thames, and was often replaced by beer by the end of the 19th century. But yeah, they had Pearl houses. But yeah,
well, this obviously gives a little background to Bill's state of mind when they're when they stop goofing around with the Frost Fair and then end up in trouble and chasing street urchins and dealing with lights under the ice and the creature because she's letting it all out. She's got her outrage on, and she's probably a little uninhibited from all of the mum that she had indulged in a little earlier.
I was going to say, you want to make Thin Ice more accurate? It's pretty damn accurate. But if you want to make it more accurate, have them get wasted. because everyone would have been. It's the best way to get over the cold. We all know
Right.
this. But they would set the names of tents were things like the City of Moscow and the Crown and Anchor by John Frost. So, there are actual pubs in there. You'd also get hot apples. Women would walk around with them on their heads. The families cooking on the ice would be butchers.
Walking around with hot apples on their heads. Wow.
That's right.
I
With
don't
a
know
little
if I
piece
like
of
them
cloth.
apples.
How do you like them apples? Toasted
Good
sheep.
time. Were there dredgers taking poop out of the Thames at all hours? Is that happening?
No, but interestingly, so in the show we see the bricks, right? We see the sort of the bricks of that come out the other end of this monster,
right? Which I don't think I mentioned in the TLDW.
Yeah.
They're basically using it to create super fuel.
Yeah. By the way, Future
that's what it
Pete,
is.
you were reminded of that thing in Space Babies as well, right? Yeah.
I thought you said you weren't doing that anymore.
I'm so sorry. It just came up. But anyway, the energy blocks look a lot like there's a block of gingerbread that still exists now that was saved from the 1814 Frost Fair. It just looks like a brick.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so it kind of looks like the bricks that we see here. Now, the gains, if you talk about losing your money, I'm going to give you the same thing. I'm going to ask you, do you want to go into the tents and play any of these games without knowing any of them? EO tables.
EO tables.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I like games.
Okay, you're playing roulette.
Nice.
Okay. Good job. As we are here every week on Pull to Open, of course.
As I learned from Wesley Snipes, you always bet on black.
Yes. And then this boy in a top hat comes up to you and he says, hello, sir, how about game of Rouge et Noir?
Red and black? Sure. That sounds also like roulette, but maybe just something or is it more like blackjack? What am I playing?
Patience.
Patience,
weirdly enough. I'm not sure how you do patience as a gambling activity, but maybe like if you finish out the deck, you win or something. I don't know. Anyway, another tent has teetotum. You going in there?
Teetotum? Yeah, I love it.
Totem.
Every weekend I'm playing teetotum. Yeah, totally.
That is a combination dice and spinning top.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you roll dice while it spins, and then
yes.
Yeah.
And of course, you're in a casino, so what are you going to hear? Imagine yourself in Vegas. You're going to hear exactly the same thing. Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then something I've not been able to understand what the hell this game is. It's the Garter. I haven't been able to find any references to what it is. If you know, dear Pull to Open listeners in the future, do let us know. Make a comment. But yeah, that was the Frost Fair. It was very foggy, and the ice froze for a distance of about 1 kilometer. So this thing was huge. It took place over 5 days. So it's definitely not within the bounds of reason that the Doctor could be there twice.
Okay. Yeah. 5 days. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he had to park his TARDIS on the bridge, which I thought was kind of a neat little moment because it gets him to sort of do a little quip about the TARDIS.
Yes.
Being a bad girl and that he reasons with it to go places.
I love what Bill says about the TARDIS being a bad girl also because she has dresses. She's dresses and she likes to go into danger. I like her. And did you notice, by the way, the Doctor gives her directions to the wardrobe room?
And they're identical to what Millie gets? Or
they're identical to...
Oh, to Dan. Dan at the end of Flux. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Really? Does Dan go to the wardrobe room at the end of Flux?
I think so. Yeah. Maybe they tell him to go to a place to just crash. Maybe it's different.
Oh, yeah, it's a bedroom. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, we've been there. Unquiet Dead.
Unquiet Dead, right.
Yes, that's right. Rose gets directions to the wardrobe room, and they are exactly the same. First left, second right, third on the left, go straight ahead, under the stairs, past the bins, fifth door on your left. Word for word.
Nice.
So the TARDIS...
continuity, people.
Right? Good job, Sarah Dollard, because that was also in the original script.
Yeah.
But yeah, River says in A Good Man Goes to War, it's my birthday. The doctor took me ice skating on the River Thames in 1814. Last the Great Frost Fairs, he got Stevie Wonder to sing for me under London Bridge. Rory says, Stevie Wonder sang in 1814. River says, yes, he did, but you must never tell him. Yeah, nice line.
Nice.
But anyway, so that's the Frost Fair.
Okay.
People
So-
did die. The ice did crack. People were
Did a regent like Sutcliffe die? Did that happen?
No.
No?
But a guy who owned a printing press definitely died when that collapsed.
Well, it's kind of neat where the doctor pulls out at the end, where it's like, here's the thing you're looking for, because basically Bill's looking for any evidence that someone noticed the creature, which again is a little silly given like the effect they show, where it's just this massive thing and is sloshing side to side and basically creating tidal waves that are splashing things, and then there's no record of it. Of course, this happens over and over again in Doctor Who. It's a little bit silly.
Yes.
But I mean, on some level, you can kind of squint and say like maybe they just forgot about it. But the one headline is that
it is kind of nice.
and
Yeah, and the kid who drowned under the ice becomes the inheritor of his estate, which is wonderful.
Because of the doctor's forgery, which actually looks a bit forged. I got to say, like the way he does the name, I'm a little like, I don't know if I would buy that, because it sounds like it was contested, but maybe someone had a heart of gold, or maybe he made a return visit.
Maybe, or maybe he attached a little bit of psychic paper. Which is this
smart, yeah.
I wonder if this is chronologically the earliest use of psychic paper, which is nice, because the only use of psychic paper to reveal the name of the villain, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It reveals that the guy thinks that they're Lord Sutcliffe's inspectors.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I got that from it's more the Capaldi's reasoning of it all, but maybe I guess you could argue that. There's a lot going on there. I thought that was clever. And honestly, it was reminiscent to me of like stuff Hartnell would pull, especially in the Reign of Terror, which we were at relatively recently, where he sort of talks people into giving him costumes, and also stuff with the jailer in that episode, and sort of playing to their vanity by saying, oh, you're super smart, when really he's making them like totally owning them and being showing their total boobs. It's like, especially with the code line. I love that bit where he's like, Hampton's the code, don't you get it? That's we're not supposed to say the thing you just said.
Yes. I like that. To go back to the history corner, I like that Bill had her own history corner in terms of looking up the results on her phone, which I love that idea of traveling through time and then just checking your phone, Googling stuff on your phone to see what's changed.
I wonder if you could do that in the moment with the little doctor upgrade, right?
Yeah.
Because you get if you get calling and data.
Yes,
with his call across time, check the internet.
I love that. RTD call us. Yeah, that's a good one to have. Okay, so let's go to the second part of the history corner. Let's talk about race in Regency London. So this is 1814, and you may have looked at the fact that the Thin Ice has a lot of actors of color, of various colors on the ice. A lot of the urchins, especially. And you may look at that and think, well, is that historically accurate, or are we doing colorblind casting here, right? Which is a choice. It's a choice that they do in Bridgerton. It looks like a choice that they're doing in the upcoming Bridgerton-themed episode, which, hi, future us, who are listening to this podcast weeks in the past and have actually seen that episode. But like that's a legit choice. So you may think, are we doing colorblind casting here? Or it was Regency England that diverse, right? So I've got some answers for you.
Well, I mean, they seem to answer it in the episode, right? Because they do talk about how it's more cosmopolitan, whether or not, like, it seems like the history corner that checks out.
Yes. So let's
I would just say, like, in something that in a work that racism is explored, I think the colorblind casting can be a distraction. It's kind of like, because then if the themes are supposed to be exploring racism, like I think it's generally better to sort of show the accuracy of the period.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think they're both legitimate choices. But anyway, Doctor Who is not making a colorblind casting choice here. It is being pretty accurate because, so here's all we have on the record. So there was a census in 1801 and a census in 1811. It did not count race. The whole purpose of the census at that point was just to get fighting age men to fight Napoleon. Second pull to open episode to mention Napoleon. But roughly, according to contemporary estimates from around about the end of the 18th century, there were roughly 20,000 black people in London. That we're not saying people of color here, we're saying black, okay? Because there were, there are definitions that have obviously fallen out of favor for obvious reasons, mulatto and quadroon. If you are, only partly of color, if you have African ancestry in your more distant past, right?
Okay.
So roughly 20,000, where it was very clear, because you got to remember, whiteness was only a definition that came along in the later 19th century and 20th century. As W.E.B. Du Bois said, whiteness is an invention of the late 19th, early 20th century, right? Not really a thing. You couldn't tell if someone was of mixed ancestry. Alexander Dumas, the author of the Three Musketeers, was 1/4 black. It just didn't necessarily prevent you gaining entry from high society. So 20,000 black people in London, which had a population of roughly 1 million, you're talking about 2%. But they would be disproportionately the poor. They would be disproportionately clustered around the port areas of the city, the river. So yes, it makes absolute sense, and especially that the urchins would be there. To fact check Bill, yes, slavery is totally still a thing. However, in 1807, there was an act that prohibited slave trading within the empire. The U.S. followed suit. This was I don't want to give the British too much credit here. This was mainly a way to sort of claim the moral high ground against Napoleon. Hey, another Napoleon reference. Because Napoleon had re-legalized slavery, which had been outlawed in the French Revolution. He brought it back in. So this was a way to say, hey, everyone, Napoleon's a bad guy. But yeah, there was still slave trading going on in the empire. Oops, no, thumbs down for slavery. Apple, come on. Yes, thank you.
YouTube.
Jeez, wow.
Apple, thumbs up, thumbs down bubbles.
Yes, please, people, do not take that moment out of context. Wow. But yeah, so it would take until 1833. Slavery on English soil was prohibited already in English law. That had been tested, but it would take until 1833. And good old William Wilberforce, do go see the movie Amazing Grace. Will knock your socks off. It is all about William Wilberforce and how he got slavery banned in the British Empire.
Nice. Wow. That's quite a corner.
Yeah, right?
Nice job.
That was a fun one. And I'd like to contrast that with, Mary Seacole and the Crimea and the history corner we did in the Flux, which was our last one, which, like, the history corner, like the depth to which I plunge into the history corner is kind of a measure of how much the episode wanted me to go there, right? Or felt good enough that I felt like I had to go there, right? I didn't like Flux that much, so I really wasn't that bothered about Mary Seacole. However, Thin Ice got me activated. So
yeah, you went deep. You got on that wetsuit, and you were all the way down.
All right.
We need to go all the way down through a list of questions to close this out, and those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question, why did the randomizer take us here?
Well,
beyond the comfort food of this being the randomizer's favorite doctor, because it doesn't really need much reason other than that, I feel like because Gatwa's season is kicking off, we just did the Church on Ruby Road. Gatwa's doctor is very different from Capaldi's, and particularly with what this episode explores, right? So it's, Capaldi famously cold, aloof. But here it's showing that the humanity is there. There's layers with 12.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to explore those layers. And again, that's the best parts of Thin Ice. But I think this is what the randomizer is trying to tell us. It's like, if you like this stuff, like he's still the doctor. It just sort of comes out differently depending on, the incarnation. And here I think Thin Ice is the one that I think better than any other Capaldi episode after viewing it this time really shows where his humanity is in that sort of layering of his personality. So that's what I think the randomizer was going here.
Absolutely. And it just like coming here, right around the time of Space Babies and The Devil's Chord. I mean, Space Babies especially, there's a connection here. And I also want to give a shout out to the connection between the Doctor's reaction of just sort of saying, yeah, you just move on. Like even after people die, you see people die, you just kind of move on. As Future Pete knows, very similar scene in Space Babies.
Yeah.
Where the Doctor does kind of, Future Pete, insert answer here. Good. Yep, we'll just leave a space for that. Right, okay. Good.
Right before the second question, which we're moving on to now, which is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Well, you know what? If the evil plot of the time-surfing goblins had succeeded in Thin Ice, then we would never have had Pete. The greatest
time-surfing goblins?
Yeah. No, the time-surfing goblins that steal Pete in Thin Ice. You remember that bit, right?
Okay.
Wait, did it? Oh, our memory's going already? No, hold on to your memory of Pete. He was the greatest companion in Doctor Who history.
He was amazing.
Oh my God, he was so good.
Many
remember
correct opinions.
Oh, so correct. He was more right than the Doctor. It was amazing. Yeah.
So what we remember now is that Sutcliffe gets killed by the creature. Like, I think, there's a very easy way for the evil plot to succeed is if Sutcliffe isn't stupid and just kills the Doctor and Bill as soon as he gets punched and his goons come in, right?
Mm.
So if that happens, I don't know if you get a Whittaker Doctor trying to work against him or something like that. I mean, I think you can just assume they're dead, and then he harvests the creature's poop for a long time, and basically Sutcliffe becomes more and more powerful because he has this amazing resource. And I'm kind of the school, maybe this is what happened in the parallel universe, and Lumic is then the descendant of Sutcliffe in that universe.
Lumic?
And that's in Pete's world. So John Lumic invents the Cybermen in Pete's world because that universe is more technologically advanced, right? Because they can build Cybermen. So the fuel from the creature gets that version of London and that version of society essentially to advance a little bit more than our world. So they can build Cybermen, do this stuff. So that's what I think happened. That was the thing that laid the groundwork. Whether or not a Time Lord was killed in that universe, I don't know. But
here's the thing: if they kill the Doctor, they're feeding the Doctor to the Beast. So you get Time Lord bricks. We've tried to tackle this question before, and what if the plot succeeded, specifically in Meglos. I remember we talked about the question of like if a Time Lord is crushed by a giant boulder, like do they regenerate as like a pancake? Like is it Lady Cassandra kind of situation? Like what's going on here? So if the Doctor is eaten and turned into a brick or several bricks, can the bricks reform? Is Time Lord DNA that powerful, or like do you just have Jodie Whittaker shaped as a brick? What would happen here? I'm very interested.
I don't know. I think it's not that interesting.
What is not interesting about brick-shaped beast poop that looks like Jodie Whittaker? Come on.
As much as I like the idea of a reanimator idea of like Time Lord stuff, it just doesn't. I mean, if there's enough damage, it just doesn't work. I mean, I think that's the boring party pooper explanation.
Party pooper, I like what you did.
We've already had a Tennant cut his hand off, right? And well, the hand presumably, I mean, they kept it preserved, but if they hadn't done that, I would assume it would have just decayed and been gone. And you can sort of get stuff from Time Lord DNA, but it's not like it's going to regenerate on its own.
Yeah, I mean, we may have learned a little bit more about regeneration energy because of that thing in Space Babies. Sorry. Last time, I promise. That's it. No more Space Babies references. Absolutely.
I'm just taking these as cues to move on to the next question.
Yes, please do.
The next question is: where is the Clara Splinter?
Yes, Clara Oswald. Splintered in time, and one of those splinters became an icicle, and it went to the frost fair. No. No, she's split at a time. She's somewhere in the background of every Doctor Who episode. I think that there's this is basically the same Clara Splinter as the one that we will maybe mention in the future when we get to A Good Man Goes to War. She's got to be there at the ice fair throughout, because could you really trust the Doctor to not meet himself?
Oh, okay.
It's like she's got to be there, just making sure they stay apart.
That's hilarious. That to be like a Back to the Future 2
Yes,
kind of thing. I'd love to see a reshoot of Thin Ice where there's like two Capaldis. It would be another Capaldi, right? Because it's
no.
Smith.
Good Man Goes to War would be Smith.
Oh yeah, of course. So you got Smith and Capaldi. There's a good multi-doctor,
right? Wouldn't that be?
Nice.
Oh my god, I want to see the two of them. I'd never thought about that before. Wow, just getting lost in headcanon now. But yes, so maybe she's Stevie Wonder's manager, who
nice.
also gets transported back, but she stays in 1814, hanging out, just making sure that, and the TARDIS will sort of know her presence. So one, it'll be able to navigate by her, but two, it will also be able to know to land a safe distance away from where any of that was happening.
So I had Clara. She's essentially in charge of locking the front door of the wetsuit store that the Doctor and Bill basically find. So she has decided to leave a little early or late, or maybe has a little too much mum at the Frost Fair at lunch and forgets to lock that door.
Yeah.
And pretty easily just wheel it right out and, get those wetsuits, which I hope they give them back.
Yeah, and make sure that they are giant creature resistant, and maybe making sure that the Doctor isn't thrown into the ice while, it would just be so easy for Sutcliffe's goons to come along and just snap that the oxygen connector, right? So you but maybe she's also connected to Sutcliffe in the sense that she is the one who prevents him from, just feeding the Doctor and Bill when he has the chance to the beast.
There you go. Okay.
She might be Lady Sutcliffe.
She could be.
Yes.
All right, folks, we're going to move on to the fourth question in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone on YouTube, hey, there's a great way to deepen your connection with this podcast beyond just liking and subscribing and encouraging others to do that. You can become a member of Pull to Open, and basically you can with the label we use is True Companion of the podcast, and for the low price of $7.99 you can not just be a supporter of the podcast, you will get the podcast a day early on YouTube. How about that? Feel free to also explore the Viscount option, where you could join us on a future commentary. Just be part of a trio of voices here.
That's right. And if you don't, then we will always lament you, like we lament Pete the Lost Companion. But you don't have to be a lost companion. You can actually pop up between us, especially if you're listening to what we're about to get to after we rate this episode. We'll get to the randomizer part. If you, whatever that chooses, if you like the sound of that, you want to be on our podcast for that, you can do that.
Don't forget to also subscribe to our newsletter at pulltoopen.net, where you'll get full notes on every single story we talk about. You can also support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/pulltoopen. Also a decent place to leave some emojis if you're into that. Don't forget to follow us on social. We're at Pull to Open on TikTok and Pull to Open 63 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads. And we're also on Blue Sky Pull to Open. So check those out. Follow along, check out the fun video clips we do, and drop us a line.
And if you don't remember our handle on any of those services, just be like Peter Capaldi and Google it.
Moving on to the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that matters for Thin Ice. What did we think of this story? The Pull to Open rating system has 6 ratings. There's the Dalek, which we give to a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, which we give to an irredeemably bad episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which is a not that good episode, but hey, at least they tried something. The Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. The Fixed Point in Time, which is a story beyond rating, usually for reasons of nostalgia. Or the Lady Cassandra, which is a paper-thin plot, but at least it looks good, especially with a little moisturizing. Sir,
All right.
what say you about Thin Ice?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I really appreciate the Star Trek reference, TNG reference. It may be very subtle, but how many lights did you see under the ice, Pete?
Oh, there are 4 lights.
Yes, there's 4 lights in one
Okay, is it
scene.
4 or 5? Oh, he's trying to fool him, and it's 5. Yeah, I'm trying to
Yeah,
think back to that episode.
yeah,
There are 4 lights.
In one scene, there's 4 in Thin Ice. There's 4 lights. In one seat, there's 5, and it's this whole question of like, is Bill actually seeing them? So I feel like that's
Right.
I don't know if that was intentional or not, but yes, there are 4 lights. I mean, it's a great episode for all the reasons we've outlined. It's definitely kind of a sleeper hit, right? And definitely one of those episodes that looks better on a second viewing, may look even better on a third or fourth. Like this is going to rise in the rankings over time, I think. But because of the problems with the monster, I think that's what keeps it from becoming a Viscount banger, which is probably for the best because a Viscount banger in this day and age would probably be hella racist. So probably best that he doesn't show up here. He might slip on the ice anyway. That Viscount in his fancy heels. So it's a Dalek. It's a very, very frosty Dalek that might have had a bit too much mum.
Agreed. It's a Dalek. Surprisingly shiny Dalek. For I didn't really remember this one that well. I kind of knew what happened in it, but was like kind of whatever. But there's a lot to mine here in terms of the Doctor and his relationship with Bill and just how the 12th Doctor is. It's very, very rewarding for that. Like you said, I think the things holding it back are the monster backstory, which I totally understand not going too far in that because it would have been repetitive. There's also Sutcliffe himself. He's the casting. I thought the guy was fine.
Yeah.
I will say he was a little on the young side, and they even sort of mentioned that. They said he's like 31 or something. And to have him sort of this boyish person sort of meeting of the minds with Capaldi, it's just not, it's not epic, right? Like, I mean, that's sort of the thing. And I don't think it needs to be with what they're doing here. I mean, he's supposed to be kind of this one-dimensional sort of racist noble of the past, but it does sort of diminish the potential of a true sort of the Doctor versus diabolical racist bad guy person. That said, I would take 100 Sutcliffes over what's the guy's name in Rosa? Kraskow.
Oh, yes,
whatever his name is.
Kraskow, the racist from the future.
Yeah, I mean that guy was just the guy was a nothing.
Yeah.
This here at least there's some resonance with history, which works. But generally it just wasn't that epic.
Agreed.
So it's not an epic, but it's great, and there are very cool little strands on Capaldi's Doctor to pull at that really pay off. So definitely a Dalek.
Yeah, good.
I'm just going to add that my daughter liked it. She thought it was really good. I saw this with Grace, and she liked that there were serious things and funny things, so she really appreciated the humor. She obviously really liked the street urchins. But she also liked that the Doctor was listening to Bill, and she really picked up on that exchange, that it wasn't just him being a teacher, even though he is a teacher and he's totally entitled to have that role with her.
Right.
But she liked that there was more of a conversation there, and then there were things she was bringing to the table. So that's great. She also liked it when the Doctor punched the guy. So that it was just generally a good episode for Bill.
God,
so she really appreciated all of that.
Definitely a contender for best punch in Doctor Who history. I don't think there's necessarily been a lot, but clearly this is better than anything that was in the Gunfighters. More satisfying as a punch. Was she a little? I want to ask about Grace. Was she a little concerned about like the mention of the Doctor killing people? Like was that kind of, did that feel
I don't
harsh
think so.
for her? No,
because I think she knows what that's kind of referring to, and I think if your mind kind of goes to the time more naturally and not more sort of, I don't know if there are really visceral moments where that happens. Maybe Planet of Fire, but there's I don't think she was turned off by it. I think she knows from watching a lot of Doctor Who with me that there is a dark side to the Doctor. That comes up now.
And maybe this can be a future side trip that we do, is looking into the Doctor's body count, throughout, right? Because we've come across this quite a bit, like the Troughton and the Ice Warriors in Seas of Death. Like he's just straight up killing them
Yeah.
Oh, no, not thumbs up for death. Apple thumbs
The
down
Ice
for
Warriors,
death.
absolutely.
Yeah, Ice Warriors, thumbs up for
Those
Ice
guys
Warriors.
were bad. They were bad people.
Thumbs up. Yes. All right. Well, pausing
Right.
only to wonder what Ice Warriors are doing at the London Frost Fair in 1814 and wondering whether that's a Big Finish special. We run into our TARDIS. We doff the fur coats we've been wearing. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should keep them on. And we fire up the randomizer, which has two components. Pete has one. Pete has the codex. That's the list of all Doctor Who stories in sequential order, including season 10 of the new show, which we've now done 5 of. And Pete, I think that is a record, right? In terms of just pure number of episodes. In percentage terms, it's probably Pertwee's first season. But in pure number terms, like 5, I don't think we've got any seasons with 5, according to looking at the codex earlier.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm trying. I can't do it on the
Okay.
fly. I'm actually I'm on this weird device, but
not counting Flux, of course, Flux, I guess, is the first full season that we've done.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about this activation of the randomizer we're doing now. This is the first time we're activating it mid-season. So technically, the count is going up as we speak, and I'm actually adding Rose right this second.
Rose, Space Babies?
For Space Babies and for the Devil's Cord.
Oh, Rose. I was like, Rose? Did we not have in Rose? Is there another Destiny of the Daleks?
So because they dropped 2, Chris, the count that you would have expected is at 185 based on before. We are now once again at 187.
Oh my god, it's Groundhog Day. Which, or is it Eve of the Daleks? I don't know. That might be the closest Doctor Who's ever come.
Yeah, if you recall, the last time it was at 187. It took us to 187.
Yes.
So the randomizer has a chance to do that again, only this time it'll be 2 stories after.
Oh my god, if the randomizer takes us to like Space Babies now, after all my mention of Space Babies...
187 would be the Devil's Cord.
Would be Devil's Cord, yes. But if it does 186, holy cow. Yes, and it did 168 last time when it chose Thin Ice, so it's definitely flirting with that number.
I know. I'm a little nervous, honestly, based on the recent history. But all
right, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves because part 2 of the randomizer is the Executor, played by Random.org, which uses atmospheric noise and the number of ice crystals in the upper atmosphere to generate true randomness, bespoke randomness, not the algorithmic-based randomness that most randomizers do. This randomizer is a cut above. And we'd like to issue challenges before I find out where between 1 and 187 we're going. Pete, what you got?
Wow, we had a big monster in this one. And let's go bigger. The biggest, baddest, most, like, give some kind of, crank it to 11 on the monster in the next one. Let's do that.
Randomizer, I know you love to do this, and I feel like you're probably going to do it anyway, but take us to an episode that we have already mentioned at some point in this podcast.
Ooh.
So, yeah, so hope...
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we've mentioned a few.
Space Babies in the Devil's Court a lot. So.
We did. So I'm skirting with danger here, but, you know, like the TARDIS, I like to run towards danger.
All right.
So
let's run now. You ready for a countdown?
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's see if we still need to be wearing our winter clothes. It is 84.
84. We're going to Delta and the Bannermen.
No.
Yes. That is epic.
Oh, if you're wondering why we're laughing, people, go back and check out the Flux podcast, I think it was, where I was tortured by the Whomoji challenge more than any other, and it turned out to be Delta and the Bannermen. Oh boy.
Whomoji challenge, I think.
And oh my god, the resonance with Devil's Cord.
Oh.
Featuring the Beatles.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, there's some back and forth.
There's
a little musical connection there.
Oh
for
my
sure.
God. So, yes, the randomizer, once again brought to you by Disney Plus, really wants you to look at the new season. But this is great. I've never seen Delta and the Bannerman. I've always
That's
been
right.
intrigued by that title. I love music and musical references in Doctor Who. I may, in fact, be writing about that right now. You'll be able to read the stories by the time you watch this. So I'm excited that the randomizer is giving me more research for my stories. Good job, randomizer.
I'm excited. I'm excited to do another 3-episoder.
Oh
That's
my
good
goodness. Those are rare, aren't they? Yeah.
They are rare. They are rare, but we're doing it. Guys, this has been Pull to Open. It is a podcast. Podcasts are great things to follow and subscribe to, but most of all, we'd appreciate it if you tell your friends all about this podcast, perhaps even through a review in the Apple Podcast app. All of those really do help the show. I mentioned the socials a few minutes ago. Like I said, follow us on there. And we would love to hear from you, especially if you have nice things to say. But even if you don't, we'll take it. We'll take the commentary.
And yes, while you're on the socials, don't forget not just podcasts, but also bands. Bands need your following. So go follow Delta and the Bannermen on all the socials. I'm sure they're out there. Just Google them.
All right, guys. Remember, that triangle isn't always a triangle. See you next time.
See you guys.